Hello and welcome to Talk New York. Today I'm going to do something a little bit, it's still a roundtable, but we're also going to get to some of your concerns. And I have to start off by saying that I thank you very much for watching the show and for taking us so seriously that you get very passionate about some of the issues that we deal with, to the point where you want to be heard, and we would love for you to be heard. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who have called and have wanted me to talk to them one-on-one on the phone. Unfortunately, the calls have gotten so much that I cannot call everybody back. And my work is also such that I'm mainly sometimes traveling. So, but I always check my email. So to get to me, send me an email. It's at talknewyork@hotmail.com, and I will reply you right away. Or if you like the old-fashioned with the Pony Express, the address will be on the screen at the end of the show. But I thank you very much, and I am going to respond to some of the comments that I have received from you, both from telephone calls and on also your letters. First thing that we're going to talk about, though, let's talk about, I have done a show about the Million Youth March. And there's a Mr. Richard Malone who wrote to me, and I'm going to respond to him specifically at the end of the show, but there's a few comments that I think we should talk about. I had mentioned that Africans participated in slavery, and that we should take responsibility for our participation. Africans sold Africans into slavery. That is a fact. I'm not rewriting history. But that annoyed so many people to the point where they told me that I'm not being sensitive to the African American history. Why should we negate that fact, or do you think we should negate that fact?
I mean, it's the truth. I mean, black people sold black people to the white race, and that's not something we can shy away from. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people have difficulties accepting the truth. They like to rewrite the history, but we cannot rewrite what has happened. This is how it happened, and this is what we have to accept it. But we need to find a way to move on from what the white society have done to us as black people, and to start learning to treat and love each other, and to form a solidarity to make us stronger, because there are a lot of us, instead of hating each other and having black on black crimes, we need to join together and be stronger. You know, and that's a fact.
Well, first, I want to just challenge that phrase. I hate when people say black on black crime. In America, FBI statistics, 80% of crimes on average are the race of the victim and the perpetrator are the same.
Okay.
So when we say black on black, we sort of identifying, we sort of separating it. You know, most crime in America is race on race, black on white, Hispanic on white, Hispanic on Hispanic. I always think the Holocaust is probably one of the greatest white on white crimes, but we would never call it that. So I think we need to stop again labeling a human phenomenon in terms of race. But yeah, I agree. I think that one of the reasons that a lot of people feel uncomfortable with the fact that they talk about the fact that Africans sold Africans, because I know some white people have used that as an attempt to absolve white people in America for the crime. And I say no, it doesn't absolve, because just because two people are beating a third person, the fact that two people are involved doesn't absolve either one. Also, too, but another distinction I would draw is that white Southerners and white Americans claim to be Christians. And I think that, to me, that makes a difference, because the Africans never claimed to have any religious beliefs. I mean, it was just a matter of...
Well, they had the religious beliefs.
Right, but it didn't include like all the Christian tenets. And so that's why I think that there was, to me, the white American should be held to a higher standard.
A little bit hypocritical in that sense.
In that sense. And also, too, I have studied some of the way slavery operated in Africa. And there wasn't this delineation. In other words, the people who held slaves did the same work the slaves slaves did. Basically, the women were farmers and gatherers. The slave worked next to the woman who owned her.
Right. This is Africa.
This was in Africa.
Right.
And also, the men were warriors in Africa. The slave men were warriors along with the guys who owned them. So it wasn't this sort of badge of inferiority necessarily. Also, a slave in Africa could assume a position of leadership, you know, in the community. In other words, it wasn't like you were just a slave forever. I mean, you could have a person who was a slave having a child with a person who was a non-slave, and that child would be able to grow up and be chief or assume some leadership role. So it wasn't quite the same. Even though I still think, you know, we still have to point out that Africans
I
were
think there are a few misconceptions about what you just said, but I want to hear what Aaron's opinion is before I.
Well, I kind of agree with both of you on a lot of the issues, but I sort of take exception to what you just said.
Okay.
Regardless of the position of a slave in Africa, you know, that you could be a slave and you have this opportunity, and it's not. I don't think that's the issue here. I think the issue is that we, blacks, participated in a very, you know, inhuman, atrocious act with people that weren't black. I think that's the issue.
Well, but also, too, again, I don't want to defend this, but if suppose I own a dog, and I don't want to make this analogy. This is not a good analogy, but I own a dog, and I'm good to this dog, even though it's still my pet.
Right.
If I give one of the puppies away, thinking that these people are going to have their same concept of pet ownership that I have.
That is where I disagree with you.
No, I disagree with you on that.
Let me
because I can't believe that these people
didn't know
what was happening.
Oh, they did know, but
so then that analogy does not work.
Yes, absolutely
I don't know if any of you saw.
No, it absolutely does. If you have a concept of how you treat your slave, it wouldn't be unreasonable to think.
You know what I want to say to you is, why did they do this? I think it was for greed.
Absolutely.
It's something called greed.
I'm not denying
and they couldn't really care less what happened to them. You know, I don't think they were concerned about how. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying in that sense. I don't think that has.
Did anybody see Dr. William Gates' program on PBS, The Wonders of the African World? I believe it was.
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, probably when it come time for them to ask for money again for the drive for PBS, their funding, they will show it again. But if you could get it in the library, I'm trying to make sure that I have the actual name. I think that's what it is. Wonders of the African World.
Wonders of the African
I think that anybody should see it. I didn't totally agree with the angle that he was doing the show, meaning that he was set out, as I understood it, he was set out to prove that Africans are not quote-unquote dumb as the Europeans have portrayed Africa. I think that is not even an argument. You know, for us to be sitting here, for him to be teaching at Harvard, that's not even an argument. So it's not something that I will even entertain by going out to prove that Timbuktu had a mosque or a library. It's not important.
Right.
What was important from that show to me was the fact that responsibility for people being sold into slavery and accountability should be fair.
Right.
And Africans cannot hide behind the I didn't know what they were going to do with these people.
Right.
If they thought, let me finish my thought. I am an African. I grew up in Africa. I came to college here in America. I would tell you today that if American government will give an African government $1 billion to ship people over here, they will do it without any hesitation.
I want to make another point is,
okay, and I don't mean to cut you, but I mean I got a lot of calls and people trying to accuse me for I'm not rewriting history. I will not rewrite history. And when I went to school at New York University, and black studies was not a prevalent thing at my time. Actually, we protested to get an African American studies there. I African American studies on my own, and I have a professor that, even though that course was supposed to be an elective, she made us read 10 books.
That happened to me. I did the same
I
thing.
know several things. I know that African Americans were not docile like they said they were. They didn't start fighting and singing and marching in the 60s. They've been fighting since they came here. They've been trying to go back since Nat Turner or whatever. Yes, that's his name.
Nat Turner.
Since his time, black people have been fighting to get out, to free themselves. But at the same time, the people who sold people from Africa, it doesn't negate, like you said, the responsibility of the white people. It just accounts for it. If a black African wants to sit on this panel and tell me that white people just cross the ocean, people who don't look like you.
I was going to make that point. That's
people
what,
who do not look like you.
And not be suspicious.
Cross over the ocean, come into your house,
Right.
took your children, and you did not fight, then everything that they've said about black people is true. We have no brains.
Right. I mean,
If we believe that these kings and queens and monarchs and whatever they were at that time didn't know where these people were being taken, they probably didn't know the magnitude of it, but they definitely knew that they were selling people into slavery.
I agree. That's
Yeah,
what I'm
this is
saying.
a
There was
point-
no, there was no way they could have
this
known.
is another point. The point
And
that
they knew that it wasn't a piece of cake. If it was a piece of cake, they would have sent their own people.
And this is a point I want to make. You hit upon something that I wanted to make before. Why would I sell my own people to someone who doesn't look like me? I'm not familiar with your culture. Why would I feel that you are going to nurture that child that I'm selling to you, or view that child
Better
the
than
same
me.
way I do?
Or
Getting
better
back
than
to your
me.
point.
Right. Trust
Well,
the
no, but I'm
person.
saying, but why
No.
would you think they wouldn't? Because you don't
Why
know.
would you think they would?
Because I'm saying you don't know. In other words, if I have an institution of slavery,
So if you
But
don't
no, let me
think
ask
that-
I'm saying if I have an institution of slavery,
Let me ask you something. If you had a child, and you were to take this child up to Westchester, some very white area, to a nice, rich, white home, do you think that child is going to be getting treated the same way as if that child was in your home?
Yeah, because
I mean,
No,
maybe
you're asking me a question. Let me finish, please.
it may
Let me
be
answer.
better in terms of economics and opportunities.
Okay.
But it's going to be different.
Because I'm an American and live in New York, I have a
So am
concept.
I.
I have a concept of what it's like in Westchester. Westchester, the company I work for, we have an office there.
Right,
But
okay.
I don't. But the Africans who sold the Africans in slavery, they had no idea of what.
I can't buy that.
They didn't know the
They've never
magnitude,
been to
but they
America.
knew.
I cannot buy that.
But they
I
knew
just-
it wasn't a piece
It
of
was
cake.
Right, I agree with that. But I'm saying, what did they do? What they did have is their own concept of how slavery operated within their
Within their
environment.
environment.
Okay, and that's what they went by. And that's my point.
I would have agreed to that, except that these slaves were not taken right away. Most of them, they were housed.
They would put
And
in a
most of
certain
the
place.
time,
Right.
Certain
in
places.
Elmina Castle, which is one place, and they were in chains. They were bonded. They were
mistreated.
actually kept
They
in
knew.
darkness so that they would not find their way out or try to rebel or do anything. And as a matter of fact, in that home, I believe in Dr. Gates' series, and you guys should really see the show. I mean, I don't know him. I'm not getting any money from him, but if he's watching, I need money. But I think that it was a very educational thing, and every African American should watch it. Not to watch it and hate Africans, because as angry as it makes me, I can't be responsible because I wasn't alive. And by the way, my name is Yaa Ajimai, and there's a Yaa Santua who actually fought the British. So anytime I try to do something that my husband thinks is too masculine or whatever, he calls me Yaa Santua. But anyway, that's another issue. But the point I'm trying to tell is that I think that I understand from the African American point of view that you want to try as much as you can to see the goodness in your brothers and sisters. And for the most part, they were good people. For the most part, they were manipulated. But they made conscious choices. They knew the people they didn't want around. When I was growing up, going to school in Africa, I was told that the people who were sold to the Americans were criminals. Okay, they were they were rapists, the murderers, whatever, and as a matter of fact, I mean, and I'm gonna annoy some Africans. When I was in high school, which wasn't long ago, we read a book called The Dilemma of a Ghost, and I think you can get it in Barnes and Nobles and read it. An African man who lived in America and brought home an African-American wife was not accepted. It was totally unacceptable because so far as the culture was concerned, he has married somebody below him. She was considered a slave. Okay, but we have to accept responsibility for our own mistakes, and then we can account for the other people. But if we don't own up to it and we say that they just came and bullied us into sending so many criminals to the Americas, okay, then everything they said about us is true because we have no brains. If you are sitting in your house and somebody knocks on your door, you open the door and see a person who doesn't look like you. He cannot possibly come from where you live. Your curiosity alone. I mean, let me say this, and I know I'm talking too much, but let me say this. I think if an African had gone to Europe and have picked up a few European kids and taken them across the river, by the time he come back, there will be this wall, big, tall, long wall over there with a whole nation of army waiting for him over there. Okay, or if they don't follow him to investigate where he's taking.
Are you talking about now or during that time?
During that time, if anybody have gone to Europe to try and do something like
you're
that,
absolutely wrong. You're absolutely wrong.
I am not
Europeans had a very, very strong class system. That's why so many. That's why people were sold.
But it was within themselves. They were not going to sell the Irish people to.
They had slaves among themselves, but that's among themselves.
Right.
Oh, I were not going to give it to. They sold their own into slavery, but to each other.
Right. They would not sell them to Africans.
They were selling among themselves. Okay.
Now we're talking about hypotheticals. I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if wealthy Africans would have gone to Europe and said, we will give you gold and riches for the people you have in prison.
No, absolutely would not happen.
I disagree. I disagree. I disagree. Because again, I think you're giving maybe Europeans too much credit.
No, I think you're not giving Africans enough credit.
To
not know what they were doing.
Oh, I agree. I think they know what they were doing.
You were not giving them enough
absolutely.
Credit.
That's my point. I absolutely think they know what they were doing.
They didn't know what they didn't know.
They couldn't have known because they had not been in this country. They could not have known what was going on. They maybe didn't care. That maybe was the point. Maybe they said, just do what you will. Do what you will. But they couldn't have known. And I also think during the time in the 16 and 1700s, when people were being put in jail in Europe for debts, for the most minor things being hung, there's no doubt in my mind that if wealthy Africans had traveled.
But look at what they did with their own. You made an interesting point. Look at what they did with their own so-called criminals. They gave them a whole island called Australia.
No, they didn't give them an island. They sent them there.
Well, that was your punishment in Australia.
They were sent them there.
Why didn't they send them to Africa?
They sent them to Georgia. They sent them other places.
No, she made a very good point. Why didn't they send them to Africa?
Well, because they didn't have.
They didn't know what to do. 6 hours.
They didn't have.
Much closer.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Why
I cannot go
to a totally different continent?
I know,
with different colored people. Why not?
Why not?
Well, they did because they were dark people in Australia.
Yeah, they were dark.
They were Aborigines. The Aborigines are considered black.
So who rules Australia right now?
Well, now the people do. But you say that they would not send them to a place of people of color. Australia was ruled by people of color.
They lived there, just like the Indians lived there. The white people dominate.
Exactly.
So they're going to take them to a place where they don't think they can dominate.
But I'm saying, but that doesn't support your point because you're saying they would send them where people are like them. They sent them to Australia where there were black people.
No, I said they will not send them
actually,
the people to be used as slaves by those people.
So,
they sentenced them to live there. They did not send them there to
Mexicans in Australia?
Not Mexican, but I mean Indian. Indian. Well, they could be Mexican, but Indians.
No.
They did not send them to Australia to serve the Aborigines over there.
Why didn't they send them to some place where they were people?
No, for them to serve.
Right. Why didn't they send them to
Africa? Slaves.
And put them into
just like the black people send black people to be slaves in Europe. Europe and America.
They sold them. They sold them.
Well, send them, sold them. It was for
No,
what?
that's a difference.
They sold
It's a
people.
selfish act.
They sold people for as
in other words-
valuable as a gift as a
So you-
bottle of whiskey.
But what if the Africans?
Okay.
What if the Africans wanted to buy them? You're saying the Africans? Maybe the Africans didn't want to buy them.
They wouldn't sell it to them.
They
I
wouldn't
don't
let
think
happen.
If they wanted to, they wouldn't
They
sell
would
it
not
to
sell
them.
it.
Okay, how do you know that? So you're speculating.
No, well,
You're speculating.
I'm speculating on something that didn't happen, or maybe
Right.
it did happen. I'm not sure. We don't know for sure that
Right.
didn't occur.
Anyway, this is a subject that I think
That is
there
really-
will be another show.
Yes.
Only for
Yes.
us to dissect.
Yes.
Let me just finish. Let me make one more point. 'Cause you said that if today, if the United States would give Africa $1 billion, they would send people.
Yes.
Right.
I believe, but I'm saying the problem I have with that kind of statement is that probably would happen in Asia and other places too. There probably other people would be willing to sell their own for $1 billion, not just the Africans. And I guess that's
Well,
that's
there'll
what-
be. Well, okay, let me put it this way. I can only talk for the Africans because
I
I am
agree
an
with what you're
African.
saying about Africans.
But I think, for my own bias, thoughts and judgments, I think Africans would be more apt to do
Than
it
any other people in the world.
any other
Right.
people in
Okay.
the world.
Right.
And judging from their history,
Okay.
I think they will be
Would
much
do
more
it. Oh, yeah.
readily available.
Sell their
Not
own
even
down the
think
river,
about
so
it.
to
Okay,
speak.
somebody said.
I mean, you have to be willing to own up to it.
Right.
You know.
I'm not denying any of it.
Right.
You know.
Okay. That, like I said, this is something that we will revisit and we will dissect it. So everybody probably will have to go and do their homework
Yes.
this time. So we talk a little more about it. But this is an interesting email that I got, and I'm not vouching for the truthness of this or the authenticity of this thing. But somebody sent me this, and I'm going to read it. It says, "Can you imagine working in the following organization? It has a little over 500 employees with the following statistics: 29 have been accused of spousal abuse, 7 has been arrested for fraud, 19 have been accused of writing bad checks, 117 have bankrupted at least twice, have bankrupted at least 2 businesses, 3 have been arrested for assault, 71 cannot get a credit due to bad credit, 14 have been arrested on drug-related charges, 8 have been arrested for shoplifting, 21 are current defendants in lawsuits. In 1998 alone, 84 were stopped for drunk driving." Can you guess which organization this is? You give up?
The police.
That's a good one, but that's not it. You give up. According to this email, it is the 535 members of your United States Congress.
Congress. Oh, sounds like
Okay.
That's
And I say that is very hypocritical of them, because for all the people running for president, almost all of them, because I haven't read everybody's bio, everybody has admitted to doing some
something.
form, some drug, whatever.
But I
Right.
claim when they were younger, though.
They claim when they
yeah,
were,
they
but the
didn't
people
inhale
they
it.
put in jail are younger. They're 18-year-olds being arrested, 24. They're young. I mean, relative to some of these old guys over there, there's people who are pushing 90 in Congress and the
Yeah.
Senate and stuff. So 24 and 30 is very young. Don't you think that's a bit hypocritical for these
is.
people to
That
be
is.
doing that? And don't you think that should be relevant in people making a decision?
Definitely.
Okay, all right. One other topic, then I will probably have to close. Let's talk about the Diallo case and how it's been moved. Do we think that it's going to be a fair trial? Because I think it starts next week.
I think it's already saying it's not going to be a fair trial, and I think it's an insult to the people in the Bronx community. You cannot find, out of all of the Bronx, a fair jury. You're insulting. How many people? I don't know what
There must be. I don't know.
How many
I'm
people in
not
the
sure if
Bronx?
there's 1 million people there, but certainly.
I mean,
enough.
out of
But
all,
it's a lot of
and you
people
never
well
made
educated. I
it
mean-
right, and you never made an effort. And it's very obvious. The judge is black. You're moving it to basically a white.
Okay,
That's my answer.
So I would compare it. I also look at the Cullen Ferguson case, where the Long Island massacre.
Right.
Now, there was a great deal of publicity surrounding
Right.
that case.
Right.
Everybody, so he had been caught. I mean, there was no indication
Right.
at all that there had been anybody else. He was caught.
Right.
And the point was, he committed that crime in Long Island, and he had to pay the price
Right,
of Long Island.
right.
So I think,
Exactly.
So I think that's
Exactly.
a very good comparison of a
Right. You're supposed
right,
to convict the
right.
person, try the person
Where
where
the crime occurred.
crime occurred.
so what could we have done to change that, then?
We
What
couldn't
could
have done
for-
anything.
forced- again, it goes back to people going to the polls and voting for these politicians and stuff like that. Okay, I think we ran out of time. I don't know how much time I actually have left, but I wanted us to listen to a tape, one quick message on a tape about one comment that I received from one of the viewers.
Richard Moore again.
If we can hear it.
I watched your show again. I like to really have a moment where I could really sit down and talk to you about your show and about the viewpoints of your guests and co-hosts. It seems that this week you're talking about the sensitivity of men. First of all, if a man is really sensitive and show his sensitivity, I'm not saying all the time, I will say a lot of times, it is construed as a weakness.
Okay. Is it true?
Yes.
It's true that
I do sometimes. I do think that women say they want a sensitive man, but I think they only want it to a certain degree.
Right.
I do agree with that. I think that women, again, I think it's only so sensitive. I don't think a woman really wants a man who sits around and maybe cries as much as she does.
I agree with
Yeah, you're right.
That was Mr. Richard Moore. Mr. Richard Malone wrote me this 8-page letter, which I really wanted to respond to, and I'm totally running out of time. I apologize. But I think you brought up that I'm insensitive as a black person, my posture and all kinds of things, and I should be reading the, I think people call it ISIS or IS papers, whatever you want to call that book. I've seen it, I've read it. The Amsterdam News, you brought it up. My brother writes for Amsterdam News. So I understand your frustration. I understand where you're coming from, and I'm going to try and do justice with your letter the next time. But hopefully the thing we spoke about with racism, I didn't bring those people here to in any way to embarrass anybody, and I appreciate that you taking such an interest in me, but I think that you have to listen to what I'm saying. Also, I think you've mentioned something about our Sharpton. I have said something negative. If I did, I apologize. I have nothing against him. He may not stand for everybody, but he has helped a lot of people. And I think even in the Diallo case, I think he has done a tremendous work, and we all appreciate it. Like I said, I will try and do justice with your letter the next time. Today I'm totally out of time, and I thank you very much for taking time out to write this letter, and thank you very much for watching. And I will also call the Black Power Committee and invite them over actually and go over the letter with them so that you know. Thank you very much. I want to say happy birthday to my niece, who's 18 years now. She's going to move out of the house, get $1 million job, and make everybody happy. Nana, happy birthday. This is Yaa Okoampa-Ahoofe. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.